Nerd Talk. Today we're going to be talking about the end of The Walking Dead. So to talk about this, I've chosen to play some Walking Dead Saints and Sins. Firstly, I'm a massive fan of the Walking Dead series, from the TV show to the comics and video games, as well as the other spin-off TV shows and spin-off comics. I think it's important to say first, spoilers ahead for the end of the Walking Dead TV show possibly, and the comics. Okay, so what do I mean by the end of the Walking Dead? I mean the end of the main show, end of the show titled The Walking Dead. As many fans may know, The Walking Dead is reaching its final season beginning 2021. But how will the show end? I think to understand how the show will end, you need to understand how the comic ends. For those who don't know, the comic series is what the show is loosely based on. In the comics, we meet the Commonwealth, a group we've just been introduced to slightly at the end of the latest season of The Walking Dead. The Commonwealth are the final big group met and the biggest group in the comic series. In the TV show, we see a much bigger group in the form of CRM, which will tie very closely into the Rick movies. So who are the Commonwealth and how do they cause the end of the show? Well, the Commonwealth are a community who believe in different morals to the main Walking Dead group. That didn't go well. But yeah, they're trying to convert or they're trying to make everyone back to the way they were before, which involves a class system which certain members of the group don't agree with. The thing is, the ending to the show can't be assessed the ending to the comic because several key players in the end of the comics aren't there. For example, Rick Grimes. Rick has left the show about near the beginning of season 5. His story will be later continued in the Rick movies, but in the comics he doesn't leave the series until the very end, where he's killed off. He is killed off by the son of the leader of the Commonwealth because he takes power from the Commonwealth and starts turning it into his view, Rick's right view. He dies peacefully in his sleep, the idea being it's the first time he's properly able to sleep. Who will get that story in the show? I think you most likely give it to Gabriel. We know it can't be Daryl because he's got his own show afterwards alongside Carol. I think Gabriel's a big enough leader, you give it to him. Plus, the show has recently chose not to do Gabriel's death from the comics, which was killed by the Whisperers, choosing to have him saved by Maggie. Other big characters we have in the Walking Dead finale is Dwight. For those who don't know, in the comic series, Daryl does not exist, and a lot of his character points are taken directly from Dwight. What does this mean for Daryl's character? Probably not a lot, because I think Dwight's character would also be replaced with another character in the show. Because in the comics, Rick has to kill Dwight, because Dwight almost compromises everything with their new agreement with the Commonwealth. So yeah, Dwight is ultimately killed by Rick Grimes, which is one of Rick's hardest choices to do. So who could replace him? I feel that in the TV show, we have a couple leaders of Alexandria who are ex-saviors, as well as a couple people up in Hilltop. Any one of them could theoretically replace Dwight. I also feel you could, if you very much wanted to, replace him with Aaron, for the sake that Aaron cannot fulfill his comic story arc because Jesus is dead, and for those who don't know, in the comic he ends up with Jesus. The other main character we see in the comic series at the end is Carl Grimes, who is not killed off in the comics. The final time we see Carl in the comics is after a 20-year time jump, shortly after Rick's death, where we see that Carl is now just in a world which is slowly going back to normal. Walkers are barely existent. This 20-year time jump I don't really expect to see in the show at all, but if they were to do something like that, I'd expect him just to be replaced with his sister Judith, who if you don't know was killed off very shortly after being born in the comics by the girl from this men. So what other endings could we possibly see? I think it's very likely we just get a peaceful ending in the comics where we don't see anyone major killed off, because the Rick movies will be the ultimate end to that story. I fully expect it to be well, not fully, but I wouldn't be surprised if something where maybe they meet the Commonwealth pieces made between all the communities, and then Daryl and Cal will choose to go off on their own, leading to their spin-off show. There are also other key characters in the show and where their stories could go. I thought it's worth talking about. Negan has been a key character since his introduction in end of season 6, beginning of season 7. Where could he go from this point onwards? Well, in the comics, Negan disappears after the Whisperer Wars. He's let free by Rick, but is told to never come back. Kind of like what happens to Dwight at the end of... Yeah, at the end of... What season was that? Either way, with Daryl.
I'm just saying, maybe there's not a reason behind everything. Maybe things just happen. Circuits fuck up. I mean, Jesus fuck, man. With all this crazy shit going on, you're gonna... So what
Yeah, where could he go? I could see him rather being a main character throughout the rest of the show and them changing his storyline massively, or he's just removed from the show. Once again, maybe setting up him being one of the spin-offs. The thing to consider, and the problem has always been, Maggie. Him killing Maggie's husband means it's awkward to have them both on the show at the same time. Last time we saw Maggie and him interact, she was ready to kill him and chose not to, because it's better to let him suffer. Be interested to see if she chooses to keep that same thought. What other characters or stories can we see in the show? I feel a big thing, it's not present at all in the comics, but would be interested to see, is the story of what happens to Rick's brother. In the comic, we get a one-issue comic called Walking Dead: The Alien, which is the story of Rick's brother, Jeff Grimes. He is on the other side of the planet in Spain at the beginning of the outbreak. He's unable to get back to his brother, who is still in the coma. Whilst out there, he meets another survivor, who he ultimately helps before ending up getting bitten and dying. His final words are to the other survivor, "Find my brother Rick." And then it's a story we never get chased up, is what happened to survivor. Does she find Rick? We know she doesn't because we see Rick's story, but does she find her way to Alexandria? Does she hear about Rick? This would be something I'd like to see the show adapt in some way. We've got that new masked character, who was introduced at the very end of season 10, who we'll probably find out who he is or she is in season 11. It would be cool to see some adaptation of that story, I feel. As for Maggie, once again in the comics does not disappear for a while. Where has she been? I'm expecting it to be revealed she was with the Commonwealth, because otherwise it's just adding another big group. As for, as I said, 20-year time jump, I wouldn't expect to see that at the end of the show, maybe at the end of the Rick movies. And what kind of future could we see? I feel most of the characters would get a similar fate, with even a possible feud between Herschel, Maggie's son, and Judith, the son of Rick Grimes, like we see between Carl and Herschel in the comics. I feel these are the main key parts we'll see in the show. I feel it will end with just... I feel the main show itself will end with just peace between all the community, setting up them with most of the characters returning in the Rick movies. And then we have a couple characters go off to go do their own spin-off things, such as Daryl and Cal. If you've got any ideas on how you think the show would end, or got any theories, I'd love to hear them. This has been Nerd Talk. Thank you for listening.